everybody, good afternoon. How are we all feeling today? How are our social batteries feeling? Yes, I was expecting that kind of answer. So that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Carly Richmond. I'm a principal, sorry. It only got confirmed last week, so still getting used to it. Principal developer advocate at Elastic. And today I'm here to talk about the social battery. So sounds like we're familiar with it, so we'll skim through quickly what it is. But we'll talk about symptoms associated with a depleted battery. We'll talk about factors both in our day-to-day jobs and when we attend events like this that potentially will impact our battery, and some tips to try and, look after it and look after ourselves. So firstly, we need to explain what this is. But it sounded like everyone's at least heard of the term. Is that fair? I'm getting some nods. Okay, cool. So, social battery is basically the amount of energy that you have as an individual for engaging in social activities like speaking with other human beings before you feel like you're kind of needing to take a break and step back because you're feeling tired and depleted. We all know this quintessential stereotype, this idea that software engineers are introverts that hide in a corner and don't talk to people. And that's just not true for several different reasons, not just the fact that, there's loads of extroverted engineers, like myself, some of the time at least, but also the fact that introversion and extroversion is a scale. It's impacted by the types of activities you're engaging in, it's impacted by life events, all sorts of things. You are not going to be an introvert or an extrovert the whole of your life. You're going to kind of flow in between and have situations where you get tons of energy from speaking to people. And sometimes you just want to hide away and write some code, and that's fine. What we need to be careful about is when it's starting to run low, because that term social battery is actually a partial misconception. It suggests, at least to me, that you have this particular pool of energy that's associated with engaging with other people, and that you have other types of energy that you use for different activities. And that's just not true. You have a common set of energy for every activity that you engage in, if you think about biologically. But one thing we need to be careful of is if we're trying to force it and push it and engage willpower. So a prominent psychologist known as Dr. Roy Baumeister did a lot of experiments about willpower and kind of having individuals forced to engage in activities that they didn't want to do or abstain from particular things that they probably wanted. And his idea was that basically, if you're forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do, your energy is going to deplete quicker. And I'm sure we can all really understand that idea of if you're having to do something you really don't want to do, it's going to leave you feeling mentally and physically exhausted as a result. So let's talk about some symptoms associated with this depleted social battery and maybe check in and see how many of us are feeling some of these, because it's the last day of DevOps and I'm sure some of us will be. Mental exhaustion. Struggling to process new information. Anyone raise a hand they're feeling this? Thank you, me too. That idea of not being able to process information and be depleted is certainly one symptom to look out for. What about inactivity in a group? Have you been maybe hanging to the side of some groups, not wanting to engage in conversations with anyone today? A few. Okay, so we're doing not too badly. That's cool. Anyone had any irritation caused by loud noises or lighting? Yeah, there's another one. And this isn't just, things like loud music. This could be, well, it could be me talking through a microphone. That could be part of it as well. So apologies in advance if this is a bit irritating. What about difficulty processing social cues? Do you feel like you've maybe missed a couple of jokes today? No, we're all still good there. Okay, maybe one or two. Okay, that's cool. Any physical symptoms? Has anyone had any back pain or headaches? I had a stinker of a headache yesterday when I got home, and then I was looking after a 4.5-year-old, a noisy 4.5-year-old, so that definitely made it worse. But these are normal symptoms to be on the lookout for. And then the last one, you might have been out at the drinks last night, so I'm not sure if this might have contributed, but does anyone have difficulty sleeping last night? Yeah, maybe struggling to kind of switch off from the events of the day? That's another symptom to be on the lookout for. And we all get these, not just when we're at big events like these, but even in our day-to-day as being software engineers. Because remember that misconception I talk about, we don't just sit and write code every day. We have meetings or ceremonies. Now, it doesn't matter if we're talking about Kanban, Scrum, Safe, whatever you're using. The majority of us will have some form of social engagement within different types of ceremonies. And one of the things that's particularly challenging when we get into scaling frameworks, so does anyone use SAFE in big room planning, for example? Kind of. There's a lot of kind of in that adoption, isn't there? So these particular types of ceremonies, in my experience, tend to be very long. Probably because people actually take far more time than they need to for these things. We book in huge multi-day events, and that is really exhausting to be engaging in these types of sessions. Also think about not just the duration, but where these are. Kanban, it's less of a problem, but if you have a fixed time-boxed situation like you have with Scrum, for example, certainly when I was a Scrum Master, all of our sessions happened right at the end of the sprint. So you had the case of you had your review, your retro, and your next set of planning all within a space of a few days. And that can be really draining for people. The format is also an impact too. So think about, are you using techniques like whiteboarding? Are you using things where people can kind of take a moment to think and then note things down? Or are you encouraging that all of the activities in these ceremonies are actually mandated by people speaking? Because remember we talked about some of those physical symptoms, that idea that, that's going to impact and can lead to mental exhaustion, difficulty processing. You're probably going to find by the end that you're really struggling. So how do we kind of help with this? Well, obviously the suggestions of noting things down, allowing for people to add to living documents or do whiteboarding, techniques with post-its, these things can really help because people can take a moment to think, have some space of quiet and silence, and then note things down, and then we can discuss afterwards. Recording sessions so that people have to take a break and come back is also a useful technique that you need to consider as well. And then also think about when they are. Do they all have to be at the end of the sprint within the last few days? Can you space things out? And also, are you adding too much time into people's calendars for things? There's this kind of natural phenomenon that even I've observed in myself where, see, if a meeting is scheduled to last 30 minutes, even if we agree something in the first 5 minutes, we're still chatting until probably about 20, 30 minutes in. It's natural for us to want to extend to that period of time. So try and allocate the minimum amount of time that you actually need for these sessions. Don't feel like, I'll just add a bit of padding just in case. But it's not just ceremonies. Does anyone engage in mobbing or pair programming at all? A couple, kind of, occasionally. Does anyone do it all the time? How is that? Does that feel quite socially draining at times? Can be. Yeah, that's true. It depends on a lot of things, doesn't it? It depends on the pair, it depends on the day, it depends on whether it's in person. Also depends who's the driver, who's not, if you're switching, these kinds of things. So if you're engaging in mobbing and pairing, I'm not going to get into the debate of whether you should or should not. Generally, I'm a fan of pairing for the right situation. What I'm not a fan of is if you have the same pair all the time, because you're not encouraging diversity of thought. If it's the same person that's speaking and the same person that's driving all the time, because the other person's not getting a break. So make sure you try and switch. Think about things like break times. You should be taking regular breaks, but I've seen situations where people say that to maintain the continuity of the pair, you should have lunch with your pair. That makes no sense. If you want to go and grab a coffee, make sure you go at the same time and have your separate ways. But then also, don't have every task be for pairing. Sometimes it is nice to get stuck in and feel accomplished when you've worked on a feature on your own. So think about carefully, does the situation mandate pairing or not? That might be controversial to some. I know there's some that strongly like, we should pair for everything. But the reality is it has impacts. It's not just the social activities, though, it's the notifications. Who has their work email or their work Slack on their personal phone? Do you use focus mode or anything like that to switch off notifications? So some nods, good practice. I learned this one the hard way in one of the last roles before I left banking, that, it's great that everyone works different hours and things like that, but if you don't have your notifications configured correctly and snoozed at the right point of the day, two things are going to happen. One, all your social media is going to start pinging you in the middle of the day where you're trying to focus and do some work. And that's going to impact and drain you because your brain is naturally wired to try and go and say, I want to see what that notification is. Email is actually surprisingly addictive in that regard because you want to see if it's a good email or a bad email. It's the same reason why people gamble and use slot machines. But there's also the consideration of not just those types of notifications for work. We've also got notifications coming at us in the evening, potentially from other colleagues working in other parts of the world. So make sure you have 2 lots of focus time, one during the day to do your work, and then another one in the evening as well, so that you can focus on your personal time, or even lock your phone away, which you can use these weird contraptions to do. I did say it's also about community. It's not just about your day-to-day work. This is some of my lovely colleagues across the world attending meetups and conferences just like this. But a conference can be draining for your social battery as well. So I didn't see these. Did anyone see any stickers, color-coded stickers for DevOps this year? I thought that too, and I thought I'd missed something. So thank you for confirming. We've all seen maybe at different conferences these red, amber, green stickers that are associated with I want to reach out and talk to people versus not. And they're actually not just from a neurodiversity standpoint, it's also from a general kind of social well-being standpoint, because there's times you might have came here like I did on Wednesday to DevOps and went, I'm going to talk to all the people, I'm super excited. And then by today, we're wanting to be a bit more subdued and maybe only talk to people we know. So if the opportunity allows, ask the organisers, can I change my stickers partway through? These should be adjustable. We shouldn't just commit to being green on the Wednesday and stick for that for the full few days. Has everyone heard of the Pac-Man rule? No. That's disappointing. This should be advocated more. So when we're forming groups and having conversations at networking or even at lunchtime, use the Pac-Man rule and leave a wedge of space. It allows people that are new to a community who might not know anyone the opportunity to come in and say hi and connect. But it also, because it enforces a natural flow, allows people to leave if they need to go and get some space. Because space-time is important. I work at Elastic and we have our source code, and these were one of the values that were a big draw for me joining in the first place. The idea that I have space to work on things and think of my best work, and similar to a talk that was mentioned earlier, have my best ideas in the shower in the morning because I've had enough space to decompress. So look for those situations where you might need to take some space. There's tables in corners of the room downstairs where if you need to, go put some headphones on, or if anyone's got the loop earplugs, for example, use them if you need to. Take the time to go and sit in a corner if it's getting too overwhelming, or ask for help, and someone you'll be able to kind of recharge and break down. Or even nip out for a coffee if it's still getting too loud and you're starting to find the noise is starting to irritate you. Take the time tonight when you go home to recharge. Take that time for yourself if you're feeling that you're buzzing. I have a very excitable 4.5-year-old at home, so when I come home from a conference, all he wants to do is hang out with mummy. But sometimes I need to take 10 minutes just to myself, just to sit and not talk to anyone, or even put a movie on so that he's engrossed, and take that time to recharge. And that's a very important consideration, because we need to look after ourselves, and we also need to be on the lookout for anyone out there on the conference floor that might be struggling with these issues too. If you see someone that looks like they're struggling, you need to follow the advice of Jerry Springer and go and ask for some help. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. We've got 2 minutes left, so if anyone wants to come up and ask a question, feel free, but thank you for your attention.